Though it was unavoidable, being hospitalized for 6 months was quite tough. I've completely lost my muscle strength. I just want to settle back into my own home quickly. But here's the thing. When my husband and I returned home, there was a massive amount of luggage belonging to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. What's all this? What's going on? My husband protested strongly. We were only supposed to temporarily keep their luggage. It was supposed to be all moved out by the time I was discharged. But that wasn't the case. This is my house. The sick need to leave. Unbelievable. Things weren't supposed to go like this. Seeing me stunned, they burst into laughter. My husband and I were just fed up and dismayed. I can't stand this kind of relationship anymore. My husband seemed to feel the same. I could tell by the look on his face. We nodded to each other. Let's move out. Right. Enough of these unpleasant feelings. I can't deal with their selfishness anymore. My husband and I decided to go ahead with a plan we had been considering for some time. My name is Ellie. I'm 31 years old. I work in the office for a company that makes surveying equipment. My husband, Tom, and I married at the age of 30 after 2 years of office romance. Both my career and married life are going smoothly, and I'm living a very fulfilling life every day. Of course, there are things that I find disagreeable. Namely, my relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Both of them have incredibly unpleasant personalities. It's hard to believe they're related to my husband by blood. Because of my in-laws, I've had to endure a lot of hardship. Today, I'll share in detail about various things from that time. After getting married, Tom and I were entrusted with the management of a single-family home by my maternal uncle. My uncle has no spouse or children. He was elderly and decided to live in a facility. The house would be empty, so he suggested we take it over, and we inherited it. It's an old house but spacious and nice. The problem is, it's not too far from Tom's mother-in-law home. It's about a 30-minute drive away. Since it's in the same city and relatively close, I was called to my in-laws' house almost every weekend. At first, I thought it couldn't be helped. I thought it might be something like a rite of passage. I was just treated as part of the family. I thought they would eventually leave me alone. But I was wrong. My mother-in-law, Helen, started to use me as her legs or wallet, calling me over every time I had a day off. I'm sorry, Ellie. My back is bad, so I can't get around much. It's fine with me. What else could I have done but to answer that way? She wanted to go to the doctor. She wanted to go to the supermarket. She forgot her wallet. This month is tough. I drove as asked and paid in advance at various stores as requested. Eventually, my mother-in-law started to take my dedication for granted, and her attitude became more arrogant. If I protested or pushed back even a little, she would act as if she was the victim. What's with the sulking just because I called you over? As a daughter-in-law, it's natural for you to serve your mother-in-law. Didn't you know that when you married into the family? I told you I had plans this week. Calling me over anyway is terrible. If you didn't like it, you should have just said no. Coming here means it wasn't that important, right? We're family, so it's only natural that you prioritize us. She became increasingly uninhibited towards me. She would have me clean the in-laws' house or make lunch. There were also tasks like replacing the wallpaper, weeding the garden, or cleaning the gutters. My mother-in-law claimed to have a bad back, but whether that was true or not, I couldn't say. If someone told me it was all just a ruse to exploit me as a daughter-in-law, I wouldn't have been surprised. There was one interaction with her that I remembered well. It was when that bug appeared in the kitchen. Both of us despised that bug. Just seeing it makes her jump and scream like a little girl, running away nearly 11 yards. That time was no different. The moment I said, "Ah, a bug," my mother-in-law screamed and ran out of the kitchen. Get rid of it quickly. It's unbelievable. It's your fault, Ellie. What? My fault. How did it come to that? Because it is. You didn't clean our kitchen properly, so that's why the bug came out. Just get rid of it quickly and don't let it escape here. I couldn't help but sigh. Wasn't the mother-in-law, who lived in this house every day, responsible at all? It was astounding she could blame me, who only came to this house on weekends. It wasn't just her who was unreasonable. The sister-in-law living with her, Sarah, was just as terrible. She was a divorcee, cheated on by her husband, and returned from her marriage home about 3 years ago. She loved cigarettes, slot machines, and alcohol, behaving more like a middle-aged man in a woman's guise. She always seemed to carry an irritable mood, making me dread interacting with her. Particularly problematic was her transformation into an even worse character when drunk, becoming violent. She was the kind of person who would throw things and create a scene, constantly causing trouble for those around her. Apparently, she is highly dissatisfied with herself for being a divorcee. She attempted to drown that stress in alcohol. She was truly problematic. On weekends when my husband, Tom, was away on business trips, I would often get calls from my mother-in-law, Helen, about Sarah. "Ellie, Sarah has called from the bar. Could you pick her up?" "Me? Can't she just take a taxi home? She seems to be out of money. And it seems she's caused trouble for the bar staff as well." Reluctantly agreeing to go, I found Sarah passed out drunk when I got to the bar. When I told the staff I was Sarah's family, they all made bothered and stern faces. Drunk Sarah had broken dishes and glasses, ruined the food, and disturbed other customers. Because of her, many customers had left. Not only did Sarah reduce the day's sales, but she also damaged the establishment's facilities and equipment. The bar later issued a significant claim for damages, which surprised both Helen and Sarah. This wasn't the first or second time I had to pick Sarah up from the police station. I had become so familiar with some of the officers at the local division that we recognized each other on sight. The troubles and unwelcome episodes related to her were endless. She was truly a nuisance. When Helen and Sarah got together, the trouble seemed to multiply by 2 or 3. In my husband's absence, they began to constantly nag and complain about me. Both became comfortable in the relationship, revealing their lazy and presumptuous true natures more openly. There's a saying, familiarity breeds contempt, but Helen and Sarah didn't seem to care about that at all. My husband, for his part, seemed to be taken advantage of by his mother and sister, suffering from their behavior. "Hey, Tom, can you lend me about $2,000? "What? More money? And $2,000 at that. What on earth do you need it for?" "I'm taking Mom to a spa for some treatment." "You have a problem with that, being her son?" "Tom, are you okay with my back never getting better?" My mother-in-law and Sarah frequently begged my husband for money. Their reasons were to take my mother-in-law on spa resort tours or to visit spa facilities. They really had it easy. Due to our busy work schedules, my husband and I hardly have the opportunity to go on trips. Since they're unemployed, they seem to be having a better time. It was truly frustrating. Busy with work during the weekdays and tending to Helen and Sarah at their home on weekends. This routine placed a significant strain on my mind and body. Without realizing it, my mental and physical health deteriorated. I couldn't shake off the fatigue even with sleep, constantly feeling gloomy, and nothing seemed enjoyable. Even during times that should have been relaxing with my husband, I found myself sighing constantly. Not to be like Mom, but maybe Ellie needs some time off for recovery too. Maybe. I've never felt this tired before. I need to do something about it. Both my husband and I wanted to have children eventually. I'm almost 32. Ideally, I wanted to have our first child in my early 30s. For that, I needed to be in perfect health and free from mental stress. The sudden dizziness hit me on a Friday night. At the same time, I was hit with intense pain. My head hurt so much it felt like it was gonna split open. I couldn't stand up and curled up on the spot, alerting my husband to the anomaly. I was terrified. Because I could tell my speech was slurred. My husband turned pale. Don't move! I'll call an ambulance right away. After being rushed to the emergency hospital and undergoing tests, I was diagnosed with cerebrovascular disease. At the young age of my 30s, I had suffered a stroke. It was a situation where a single misstep could have been life-threatening. Naturally, I was immediately admitted to the hospital. Being with my husband and getting to the hospital quickly was fortunate. I don't smoke, nor do I drink alcohol. I was also not dealing with high blood pressure or high cholesterol. So, why did I suffer a stroke? The doctor who conducted the test said that the exact cause was unclear. It might be because of Mom and Sarah. They were always causing you stress. I hate to say it, but I thought the same. It's partly my fault for always putting up with it, though. Anyway, it's good I got treatment quickly. I need to get my health back as soon as possible. Thus began my long hospital stay. Among various diseases people can suffer from, cerebrovascular diseases often result in prolonged hospitalizations. In my case, symptoms of depression were also observed, which extended my stay even further. I can't forget it even now when my mother-in-law and Sarah came to visit. Despite my husband's instructions not to come, they ignored him and made their way over, saying whatever they wanted. Heard you collapsed? Come back home quickly, we're in trouble here. Right. There are so many things like washing dishes and cleaning that we want you to do. Honestly, I wish I was the one hospitalized. You know, because of my bad back, right? Get better and come back soon. Oh, and we'll be borrowing your room for a while, okay? Borrowing my room? What were they talking about? After a while, my husband arrived. He was furious upon seeing them. Hey! I told you not to come. Why are you here visiting Ellie? Quiet down. It's only natural for us to visit, we're family after all. Besides, make sure you tell Ellie about that thing. By then. My mother-in-law and Sarah left swiftly. Sorry, I couldn't stop them, my husband said, looking apologetic. I was dumbfounded by their selfish actions. When I asked about that thing they mentioned, my husband said it was about some construction work related to his parents' house. Do you remember the day when the wind was extremely strong? My parents' old house had some roof tiles blown off, and it got damaged by stuff flying in the wind. Now, there's a serious leak. So, it seems they decided to hire contractors to repair the house. It meant they needed to temporarily move some of their belongings elsewhere. Thus, they asked to use our house for storing their stuff. I see. I don't mind. I'll still be in the hospital for a while anyway. That helps a lot. Thanks. We'll make sure everything is cleared out by the time you're discharged. However, after 6 months in the hospital, when I returned home, there was a massive amount of stuff. It all seemed to belong to my mother-in-law and Sarah. My husband was just as surprised. Weren't they supposed to clear it out before I came back? What's going on? What is all this? What's happening? It wasn't here this morning. We had the movers bring it in during the day. It's fine, right? You have plenty of space. Exactly. Our house was pretty old, and actually, it was a rental, so we've already moved out. We have nowhere else to go, so it's too late to kick us out now. What a nuisance they are. They burn their bridges and then impose on us. Taking advantage of someone's goodwill like this is unacceptable. My husband protested strongly against this. But they just ignored him. As the argument escalated, unbelievably, my mother-in-law became even more outraged. This is my house now. If you don't like it, you can leave. Right. Sick people should leave. It would be terrible if we caught your illness. Seeing my astonishment, they burst into laughter. Just hearing their laughter made me feel sick to my stomach. My husband also worried about the recurrence of my illness. It was truly a difficult and unbearable time. Half a month after they started living in our house had passed. They got comfortable and started talking about wanting to go on a trip again. They said they wanted to heal their tired bodies from the move by soaking in a hot spring. So, Tom, can you lend us about $2,000 again?
What do you mean lend? You've never paid back anything before.
Stop fussing and just give it to us. It's the least you can do as filial piety, right? Pressured by his sister, my husband reluctantly handed over the money. Just how terrible could they be? They prepared that night and left early the next morning. Alone at last, my husband and I looked at each other and nodded. Let's move out. Right. In fact, ever since the cohabitation started, we had been waiting for this moment. Waited for them to go on a trip and leave the house empty. We acted quickly from there. We packed our belongings and contacted a moving company. As planned, we also called the real estate agency and said goodbye to the house we had become so accustomed to. 3 days later, Sarah called my cell phone. She clearly agitated. I could hear my mother-in-law's yelling in the background. No wonder they were upset. The house they had been living in just days before was now up for sale. What's going on? Explain yourself. Why can't we get into the house?
What did you do with our stuff? Explain properly.
Sorry for not notifying you, but we've sold that house.
What? Sold? Don't go doing things on your own. Who do you think you are?
They had no right to say such things. That house was in my name. What I did with it was my choice. They had the nerve to impose on us, and now they were the ones acting entitled. Neither my husband nor I intended to give in to them even one bit.
With all due respect, you and your mother are the reason I had to do this. I didn't want to sell the house, but you left me no choice. Wait a minute. What's that supposed to mean? Are you blaming us?
Yes. The stress from you and your mother might even be why I got sick. It's only natural we'd want to distance ourselves, right?
Don't be ridiculous. Your illness has nothing to do with this.
Who could say there was no connection at all? At least it's certain that the stress caused by them made me suffer. Sarah was still raging on the phone. She was demanding to know where we had moved their belongings. The house is empty. Our belongings were supposed to be there. Where did you put them? Do you want to be sued? Your belongings are stored in a rented storage unit. Would you like them back?
Of course. What are you even thinking?
Then, there's a condition. Please leave us alone from now on. If you promise not to interfere with us anymore, I'll tell you where the belongings are. I had enough of being called upon for money and favors. We wanted to live our lives separately, with as little interaction as possible. My proposal was scoffed at by my mother-in-law, who took the phone from Sarah.
Don't say such stupid things. I'm a mother of you too. A bond like that can't be broken.
We're discussing breaking that unbreakable bond. My husband took the phone from me. It seems he has a lot he wants to say to his mother and sister too. His face was unusually stern, his resolve reflected in his choice of words.
Mom and Sarah, you've gone too far. Lying to me and even moving in. Since that day, I've been angry, so angry I never want to see your faces again.
Hey, Tom. There's no need to yell like that.
Tom, don't get ahead of yourself just because you're the younger brother. And you should stop getting ahead of yourself, you unemployed, divorced woman. Who do you think made this trip possible for you? I'm not giving you any more money.
My husband was furious. His anger palpable. It seemed they realized they had crossed a line this time. Let's calm down and talk. That was a suggestion they made from their side. They wanted to know exactly where the storage unit was and how to retrieve their belongings. Just as we planned. My husband and I looked at each other and agreed, deciding to arrange a meeting with them. 3 days later, we met them in a small cafe. They had been staying in a hotel. Both of them were looking sullen. They seemed to believe that by maintaining their assertive attitude, they could surely make us comply as usual. That's how their faces looked, as if they thought so. We're here. Now tell us where the storage unit is. We'll also be billing you for the cost of the hotel we're staying at. That's ridiculous. If you're gonna say that, then pay me back first for the trips I funded. I've lent you nearly $10,000 in total so far. Pay up now. My husband's presence was formidable. He seemed like a completely different person compared to his usually quiet self. They must have realized they couldn't afford to anger him further. They quickly changed their demeanor, acting overly friendly and submissive. Wait a minute. We didn't mean to anger you. Just, we were also surprised by the sudden change and got a bit irritated, that's all. Right. Let's talk properly. Don't say things like cutting off ties. No, that's not possible. This involves our future as a couple. We're cutting ties with you here.
How dare you speak to your parent like that?
Despite his stern expression, my husband surely didn't want to say these things. It was their fault for forcing him into this position. They were responsible for making us make such a decision. I took over from my husband and reiterated our conditions to them. As I mentioned before, please promise not to interfere with us anymore. No calling us over or asking for money. If you agree, we'll tell you where the storage unit is. You'll also need to pay for the storage fees. And don't forget about repaying the trip costs. What? Don't be ridiculous. Do you think we have that kind of money?
Exactly. Do you understand? Both Mom and I are unemployed.
How could they be so defiant? Do these two even know what shame is? I couldn't say such things so brazenly like this. My husband was clearly taken aback. The anger in his gaze faded.
How can you talk like that without feeling ashamed? You both are like parasites. Stand on your own 2 feet. Don't rely on us. Live by your own means. It's only natural for children to help their parents. Calling us parasites is rude.
Of course, it's natural to help one's parents, and I've always done so. But there's a limit to everything. Besides, neither of you has made any effort on your part and even lied. Right?
Oh! A bug!
It was when I suddenly pointed at my mother-in-law's feet. She quickly stood up from her chair and moved away to the wall after shouting briefly. Such agile movement. It was hardly a movement someone with a bad back could make. She seemed to realize my a bug was a lie. My mother-in-law turned bright red.
You liar! You tricked me!
I'm sorry. But aren't we even? You lied about your back pain, calling me over to do housework and repairs, right?
And what about saying you needed money for a spa treatment? Going to the hot springs wasn't because of back pain, was it? Who's the liar now? Enough with the lies.
She didn't retort. She bit her lip in frustration and glared at the floor. Urged by my husband to take a seat again, my mother-in-law returned, grumbling under her breath. She appeared completely dejected, as if she had no intention of retorting anymore. On the other hand, Sarah still seemed eager to fight. Her eyes were bloodshot with anger.
You both seem to lack any respect for your elders. Taking our belongings, tricking us with lies, calling us parasites. I'm really upset.
We didn't want to resort to this kind of approach or language either. Like I've said before, you pushed us to this point. You need to understand that. I have another request. Please, both of you, start working. Take care of your own lives. That should be doable, right? Both of you are healthy, with no chronic illnesses. You have the time, and you owe me money. If you don't like being called parasites, there's no reason not to work. Sarah glared at us, clearly frustrated. Despite our logical arguments, it seemed she wasn't convinced at all. It appeared that our efforts alone were insufficient to subdue her strong will. But there was no need to panic. This was just we expected. I signaled to someone at the back of the cafe. A man stood up and approached us. Sarah turned pale when she noticed him. The man was Kevin, Sarah's ex-husband. My husband and I had contacted him specifically for this day, and he had agreed to come. Kevin's eyes were cold, showing no signs of affection for her anymore. It's been a while, Sarah. You're still the same, which is disappointing. Kevin, why are you here? Did they call you? What do you mean by still the same? Just like always, you seem to live by lying to everyone around you. Like you deceived me, you've been deceiving Tom and Ellie, right? Huh? You cheating woman. Wait, it was her who cheated. I had been told that it was her husband's infidelity that led to their divorce. However, seeing her not deny his words, it seemed his claim was true. Sarah had lied to us. She was the one who had cheated and caused the divorce. She was vain, arrogant, deceitful, and unfaithful. My dislike for Sarah grew even more. When you returned to your hometown and kept quiet, I thought I would stop fussing over it. But, Sarah, it seems like you're still hurting people around here. So what? What does it have to do with you? It's not entirely unrelated. I'm your ex-husband. If I had been stricter with you, maybe Ellie and Tom wouldn't have had to suffer. What are you trying to say? Make it clear. At that moment, Kevin pulled out a piece of paper from his pocket and slammed it on the table. Sarah turned pale. The paper was titled, Demand for Compensation for Infidelity. It stated a demand for a compensation payment of $60,000 within 1 week. Sarah shook her head and said this was impossible.
I can't pay $60,000. It's impossible. I told you, I'm unemployed, I have no savings, and I only have debts.
So what? If you don't have money, you should work. Work hard and pay back the money. That's the only atonement you can make. And make sure to pay the compensation in one lump sum.
It's impossible, I tell you. Mom, don't just sit there, say something. What am I supposed to say? You're the one who cheated. Don't drag your mother into this. You should work and pay back the compensation yourself.
Finally, they began to turn against each other. How disgraceful. My mother-in-law and Sarah's behavior was revolting to watch. They needed to learn their lesson thoroughly. Otherwise, they wouldn't even consider reflecting on their actions. I then presented a hospital diagnosis report in front of them. This is the diagnosis I received from the hospital. Based on this, I'll be suing both of you. What? Sue us? Don't be ridiculous. Why would you sue us? Didn't I tell you? My illness might have been caused by the stress from you too. That could be considered a criminal offense. As I mentioned a specific crime, both of them looked shocked. If convicted, they could face up to 15 years in prison or a fine of up to $10,000. Hearing the possible sentence made them tremble even more. Realizing they might be sued, they began to panic. Their earlier bravado was nowhere to be seen. They huddled together, shaking. It seemed they no longer had the will to resist or argue. In front of the disheartened faces of them, I spread out another document to show them. What? This is the affidavit I've prepared. I need you, Helen and Sarah, to swear to follow the terms written here. If you break these promises, I will indeed sue you. The affidavit included every possible condition. Never to call me to act like a maid again. No matter how hard life gets, not to beg Tom for money. It also documented the need to work for their own living and to repay the money they borrowed. Additionally, I made sure to include that Sarah must pay Kevin the full compensation amount in one lump sum. After reading through the entire affidavit, they shook their heads, nearly in tears.
Are you devils? There's no way we can agree to this. Pay the full compensation at once? That's impossible. We'd have to go into debt.
Then go into debt. And work hard to pay it back bit by bit. You've been frolicking around till now, so it's time to start working seriously, right? My mother-in-law and Sarah, rejected by us. They finally gave up, their heads hanging low. Seeing them like that, I finally felt a weight lifted off my chest. Later on, they apparently tried many jobs. Building cleaning, traffic guide at construction sites, and pickup staff at a logistics warehouse. It seemed they registered with agencies that dispatch workers for temporary jobs. Perhaps they don't secure steady employment because they fail to pass interviews. After all, my mother-in-law is 65 years old and elderly, and Sarah gives off an impression of being difficult to deal with. Naturally, no company wants to hire them. From now on, they will likely have to continue living day-to-day on short-term jobs. They had to borrow money to pay off their debts and the compensation. The ones who allowed these two, lacking in living skills, to take out loans were unlicensed moneylenders. If they fail to make payments, they will surely face severe consequences. It's only natural that they are desperately working. I once saw Sarah working in town. She was dressed in a uniform and wearing a helmet, directing traffic at a construction site. When our eyes met, she bit her lip in frustration and turned away. She should stand tall since she's working decently, but she's really a strange person. I've also seen my mother-in-law. She was stocking shelves at a supermarket. She was scolded by much younger colleagues, and she also looked bitterly frustrated. Both of them have such poor characters that it's likely just a matter of time before they mess up. Disliked by those around them, they will probably be unable to stay at any job long and will have to look for new ones. They should continue to wander from place to place, regretting their actions along the way. That's all I hope for them now. Since then, Tom and I have been living a normal, happy life. We are no longer harassed by Helen or Sarah. It has significantly eased our minds, and my health has improved. Perhaps because of that, I was able to become pregnant with our first child. I'm currently on maternity leave, spending peaceful days with the baby in my belly. It's a girl. My current goal is to raise her to be a fine woman. In doing so, I will surely tell her about Helen and Sarah. They will serve as examples of what not to become. Though the past few years were filled with hardships, the future will be different. With Tom and our child, I am sure we will have many happy days ahead.